Hey everyone, welcome. It's Baron. League start for Path of Exile 2, patch 0.3, the third edict, is just a few hours away, and I wanted to quickly cover my own League start plans. Now, to be clear, and I think most content creators have been very good about being open and upfront about this, nobody can truly offer you a build guide, quote unquote, at this point, because there are at least 100 new nodes on the passive tree that we have no real idea what they do. And rumor has it that even plenty of the existing nodes are changed. I think I heard about some nerfs, that kind of thing. So to borrow a phrase that I heard recently and kind of liked, consider this video less of a how-to and more of a me-do. This is just more of an update on what I plan on fiddling with at League Start. Now, I do happen to think it's going to go fairly well, but this isn't like build guides that I've put out before where I'm saying, I firmly recommend this, I can vouch for it, I can tell you the decisions you'll need to make, all that stuff. None of that. So, what am I starting? It's going to be, at the beginning, a Minion Army Lich. I actually settled on this before the news that we just got today, just a couple hours ago, that minions are getting across-the-board damage buffs, so that is an amazing bonus. I would have run this anyways, even without that. Now, I know some people out there are doing like dedicated Spectre Liches or dedicated Storm Mage Liches, that kind of thing. Pick one minion and stick to it. Those look good too, and honestly, after experimentation, I may end up going in one of those directions if this initial, minion army of a smattering of minions doesn't work out for me. But honestly, the reason I'm going to at least experiment with that minion army style is because, there's a factor that I think is being slightly overlooked because people aren't yet in the mindset of building with the new patch changes in mind. Not yet. See, there are a lot of good, interesting things that we can do now with this change, that you can now use a support gem an unlimited number of times in different skill setups. But I think one of the unambiguous winners of that change is the Minion Army playstyle. The reason for that is the Muster support gem, which now effectively reads, for any Minion Army type build with a smattering of minions, your minion skills now can only have a maximum of 4 support gems rather than 5, but they deal 40 to 50% more damage. The Muster support gem gives us 7% more damage on any minion skill it is socketed into for each different type of permanent minion that you have across your build. 7 times 5 types of minions, or 6 or 7. So in a build like this, that is a huge amount compared to other support gems, which typically are more around like 20, maybe upwards of 30. And here you're talking more like 40 to 50. And I'll admit, this is exactly the sort of problem, for lack of a better word, that people like Sir Gog accurately predicted when this support gem change was made. This is a situation now in which more interesting but suboptimal support gem decisions just get replaced in many cases with just whatever the mathematically best support gem is, once there's no more restrictions on how many times you can use a support gem. But, it would be foolish to run anything but Muster in this slot. That's what he was saying, that why not just build in to certain gems, like if you have X number of minions, get 40% more damage and then save that gem slot for something else. So I admit that this does definitely fall into the category that some folks were talking about, but on the other hand, it's encouraging me to play a style that I might not have considered before, so maybe it's not all bad. Yeah, it makes the choice of that particular support gem easy to make, almost trivially easy, you have to do it. But for me, it was kind of the reverse. I saw what Muster could do with this new change, and I was like, geez, that kind of makes me want to do a minion army setup that I probably wouldn't have done without that change. By just grabbing a smattering of different skeletal minions, which are easy to come by, and then throw in a Spectre and a Beast Companion, it's going to be trivial to get at least 42 or 49% more damage off of this gem. And I suspect it's not going to be too hard to push even further beyond that if I want to. And the question is going to be whether the trade-off is worth it, and at what point is it worth it. Is it worth it to go every single minion that you summon is different, if you can manage that, or do you try to get 5 different minions to get a good chunk of this bonus, but then have the majority of your, the bulk of your army be of a single type, like the Spectre or the Storm Mage or whatever. And I don't know yet. This is one of the many reasons that this is not a guide. I think one reason that this army style setup has a decent shot of success with a, like a wide selection of minions rather than focusing on one is the Lich Ascendancy node Necromantic conduit. Let's pause that and bring this over. Necromantic conduit here. Well, you are not on low mana, which you just build to arrange that, so that's never going to be a problem. You and allies in your presence have Unholy Might, lose 5% of maximum mana per second. So prior to taking Soulless Form, which lets you regenerate a bunch of mana, you can just get some extra mana on tree and gear to offset this. So basically this just says you and your minions constantly have Unholy Might as long as you are near your minions. As an aside, this gives you some incentive to boost up your presence area of effect. Anyways, doesn't matter. What Unholy Might does is it takes all of the damage that your minion is dealing of any type, and it says, all right, however much that is, add another 30% of that as chaos damage. So all of the other stuff that you're doing to improve your damage, flat damage, increased damage, more damage, that gets multiplied again by this adding of chaos damage. And what this does in effect is it takes all this smattering of, you've got physical minions, maybe a fire, an ice, a lightning, that kind of thing, and it gives them all at least 30% of their damage will be of the same type, chaos. So one thing that does is it makes it pretty easy to pick a curse. I've been fiddling around in POB and it seems pretty straightforward that Despair for chaos damage is going to be the easiest curse to pick. It makes it easy to choose to pick up this Minions Inflict Withered on hit from Right Hand of Darkness, since we're going to be in the area anyways, to pick up Lord of Horrors. What else? I'm even toying with the idea of trying to parlay the fact that all of my minions will be doing some chaos damage, parlay that into some kind of poison setup, though that would mean, by necessity, any elemental minions like the Storm Mages, the Frost Mages that I'm using, I would be getting less utility out of those. I would only be getting the poison damage from those that's coming from that 30% chaos portion. So that's not great. You'd obviously still be getting the flat damage, but whenever you go poison, you kind of give up the opportunity to scale some of your damage in other ways. So, it's up in the air. This is something, though, that does potentially benefit again from this support gem change. Now we can slap the Envenom support in every minion setup on the build. Now that only gives us a 50% chance to poison. So, I'm kind of hesitant about that. It's basically like cutting your damage in half. Actually, it's not as bad as it would be in PoE 1, because by default, only one poison can be on an enemy at a time. Yeah, maybe poison's not the way to go. See, I'm still kind of thinking this through, but I will be curious to see whether any of these new Abyssal Jewels that we're getting with the Abyss League, are they going to have mods that are like their Path of Exile 1 counterparts that give minions a chance to poison? That might influence me to try and go in the poison direction. We'll see. But the thing that I'm torn on, the last big thing that I'm torn on, is what to take for my fourth Ascendancy node. So 3 of them are pretty straightforward. The first one, the Unholy Might node, Necromantic Conduit, that's like the tentpole centerpiece of damage for the build, so that's kind of a no-brainer. The 2 defensive ones, Soulless Form and Eternal Life, they kind of go together because the second one, Eternal Life, makes the first one so much better. That damage bypassing energy shield is just getting deleted when you have Eternal Life. Like, you just don't take that damage. And any other sources of damage bypasses energy shield. So I think there's one... Yeah, over here. I knew it was around here somewhere. And then you're maybe tempted to take Adziri's... what is it? Acuity? Doesn't matter. The Adziri helmet that does the same effect at 10%. In any case, that's 3 Ascendancy points that are pretty straightforward. I'm going to take the 2 defensive ones, and I'm going to take the Unholy Might one. So what are the options for the 4th and final one? There are 3 different options. Number 1 is Blackened Heart here, which increases the magnitude of Unholy Might. You contribute more and more of the damage to Chaos. That makes it more and more compelling to use that kind of wide variety of different elemental minions, because you're getting, you get damage, you get the chaos damage out of them, you get more out of your Despair Curse, more out of your Withered, that kind of a thing. But on the downside, it requires you to kind of think about stacking mana in the build, which you otherwise wouldn't have any particular reason to do. You don't have to summon minions all that often because they revive themselves. Their command skills don't cost any mana. I'm not aware of any that cost mana. So you wouldn't normally stack mana. There is the easy one-button solution of just speccing into Eldritch Battery down here, which just converts all energy shield to mana, but then your defensive nodes suck, and you don't want to take those anymore because they rely on having energy shield. So there's no easy solution there, and Blackened Heart just kind of takes a hit as an option. Now, it could be that with minimal investment into mana, if this takes it from like 30% damage as chaos up to like 50% damage as chaos, maybe that's enough that I take this regardless. But there are other options. So Crystalline Phylactery here, this is another very popular choice. I know a lot of people take this. It may not be the best bet early on before a great jewel becomes available. This is kind of reliant on the gear that you can get. It may be something to transition to, this Ascendancy point, once it is later, once I've got a little bit of currency, you can get a good jewel. And theoretically, this could be more attractive depending on how those Abyssal Eye jewels are going to work. We know they can go in rune sockets. Could they go here? My take is no. It seems pretty clear that they've called out basic jewel by name, and there's a pretty strong chance that even if an Abyssal jewel could go into a socket on the tree, that it wouldn't be able to go in here specifically because it calls out basic jewels by name, which I don't think that's going to be, but it is something that I'm going to keep a half an eye on. I mean, who knows? GG might change it, so I'll just keep a half an eye on it. And then the last option is to go with Soul Rupture, Rupture the Soul over here. This is just Profane Bloom from the Occultist in Path of Exile 1, same effect, down to the wording. And in PoE 1, this would be a no-brainer. I would absolutely take this for clear as my last Ascendancy point. But remember that in both games, it requires the enemy to be cursed. But curses are in a bit of a different spot in PoE 2, so that has different implications for us here. There are fewer ways to apply them automatically, and then there's that really clunky activation delay that you either have to put up with or find a way to work around. So it comes down to this. Do I really want to go to the hassle of, I don't know, like either holding my minions back for a second and a half to make sure the curse activates? That seems counterproductive. Like you take this for the clear speed, but then you're sacrificing your clear speed, so that doesn't seem to make any sense. Do I want to, spend valuable ascendant or valuable passive points on curse activation speed, or waste my boot slot on Wind Scream to get, a lack of curse activation? On top of that, do you waste the spirit of putting this into a blasphemy setup so that it is automatically applied, or do you say to yourself, well, I'm a minion build, I'm not doing much casting to begin with, I can afford to just self-cast Despair on every pack? And maybe that's the way you go, but it is a conundrum that I've got to think through. It may just end up being easier to go with Blackened Heart in the end and get improved clear speed just by killing individual enemies faster. I don't know yet, gonna have to play with it. In terms of leveling, like I've sketched out a tree for myself here. This is like, I did it like it was a guide, even though it's not. This is just for my benefit. This is super rough. It's not optimized. I figured it's not worth the time of truly optimizing the tree when we know perfectly well that everything's going to change as soon as the patch goes live. But generally speaking, I know that I'm going to stick with path due north from the Witch Sard and then kind of curve off west, because that is where the spirit and reservation and minion reservation stuff exists, and it's always potent to be able to get more minions on the build. In terms of gear that I'll be targeting while leveling, obviously you always want to target a high spirit scepter, maybe even target two of them. If I feel like giving up the defense of a shield, I may go that route. If I want to stick with one of the many scepters that gives skeletal warriors, which I'm kind of leaning towards, then potential upgrades to the level of those skeletal warriors will come at item levels for item level 12, 21, 33, 36, 45, 49, 52, 58, 65. So pretty routine upgrades. And then after that, it was announced that randomly mapping, you're going to be able to find those scepters that go all the way up to level 20 for the skeleton. So that's good. That's a buff. And then even if I don't go with a skeleton scepter, there are some tempting aura-based scepters. There are still going to be some breakpoints that I'm going to want to look out for in terms of the level at which higher spirit modifiers become available and the level at which higher minion gem level modifiers become available. I think probably the two most important ones that I'll keep an eye out for are the minion levels that become available at an increase at level 25 and at level 55. That'd be the time maybe I save up some gold and do a little vendor gambling and see if I can roll a good minion scepter at that point. And then in terms of uniques I might look out for early on, these are things that have been relatively cheap in previous leagues and could help the build. So like Enfolding Dawn, it's a body armor that gives a fat stack of spirit. Yes, you don't get the benefit of intelligence on your mana, but if we don't take the Blackened Heart node, we don't really care about the effect on the mana. And even if we did care about the effect on the mana, the amount of added spirit and minions that you get might outweigh that. Yeah, I'll probably keep an eye out for that. It looks like it's usually cheap. And then the Bones of Ullr boots, a little less cheap, which is funny, coming from Path of Exile 1, where you hide those on your loot filter. Bones of Ullr have a fairly bad movement speed roll range, but they offer a good chunk of reservation efficiency for undead minions, which most of mine will be. So this might be worth it, even with the hit to movement speed. But anyways, that is the plan. I am going to try and stream some, no promises, but real life is pretty busy for me right now. My leveling process and progress is therefore not going to be as fast or smooth as the pros, or even as fast or smooth as mine usually is. That's okay by me. Real life wins, but I do apologize that I won't be able to have kind of those rapid fire updates the way I did on the most recent Path of Exile 1 League start. In any case, let me know what you are starting down in the comments, or if you've got any clever suggestions for this Lich build. In the meantime, thank you for tuning in, and take it easy.